It was just after 11. Rain had been tapping on the windows for hours. Not heavy, just enough to remind you how quiet everything else was. I'd only lived in that building for a couple weeks. A worn-down place just outside the city. Tall windows, creaky floors, and that old radiator heat that always felt a few degrees too hot or too cold. The hallway outside my door was dim. One of the overhead bulbs had gone out again. I should have waited until morning. Whatever the noise in the pipes was, it could have waited. But something pulled me toward her door anyway. Maybe it was just the excuse. I knocked softly, more out of hesitation than politeness. 3 taps, then silence. I was already turning to walk away when the lock clicked. She opened the door slowly, not startled, just deliberate. Hair tied back loosely. A navy robe cinched at the waist, sleeves pushed to her elbows. The hallway light caught in her eyes that didn't flinch. Her gaze held mine for just a moment too long before she spoke. "If you're going to knock at my door so late," she paused. And in that pause, something inside me shifted. "You'd better be ready for what's waiting inside." She didn't say it like a threat. Not exactly a flirt, either. More like someone who had opened that door before, for people who didn't know what they wanted. And regretted it. I started to apologize. Something about the noise in the pipes, the radiator clanking. But she just tilted her head slightly, as if deciding whether to let me finish. Then, to my surprise, she stepped back and opened the door wider. "Come in. Just for a minute." Her apartment smelled like chamomile tea and cedar. Jazz played softly from a record somewhere, the kind of music that wraps around you without asking permission. A warm, worn armchair near the window. Books stacked in corners. A soft yellow glow from a lamp that looked older than both of us put together. She moved through the space like she belonged to it. Or maybe it belonged to her. "You'll get used to the pipes," she said, pouring me a cup of tea like we'd done this before. "They only complain when the seasons change." I watched her hands. Graceful. Measured. She didn't fidget. Didn't over-explain. She didn't fill silence just to escape it. We talked a little about the building, about the neighbors. Her voice was low, textured. Everything about her felt settled. Not in a dull way. In a way that made you want to lean closer. When I finally stood to leave, she didn't walk me to the door. She stayed seated, her hand wrapped around her cup, eyes half-lidded. "Don't knock unless it matters," she said. And I carried that sentence with me all the way down the hall and long after. I didn't go back to her door the next night, or the one after that. But the quiet changed. The building still creaked, the pipes still hissed, and the radiator still coughed like it was chain smoking in the walls. But now there was something else in the silence. Something expectant. I started noticing things. The way she opened her windows in the morning and played music that drifted down the hallway like incense. The faint scent of her perfume that lingered on the stairs if I came home late. Something floral but grounded. And her voice, now familiar. Sometimes heard through the wall, murmuring into the phone, low and precise. Always calm. Always alone. Then one evening, a knock came at my door. I opened it, surprised. There she stood, same dark robe, though this time it was tied more loosely, as if she hadn't decided whether she was inviting or warning. "I'm making tea," she said. "You can sit if you want. Just for a minute." I didn't ask why. Her place looked the same as before, dim, soft, a kind of lived-in quiet that made you want to whisper. She gestured to the chair by the window. I sat. The teacups she used were delicate, mismatched, the kind you find in antique shops or inherit from someone who loved beautiful things in small doses. "I had a tenant once," she said, pouring hot water over the leaves. "Young like you, thought I was lonely, mistook manners for something else." She handed me my cup, fingers brushing mine for just a second. Warm, intentional, or maybe not. I couldn't tell with her yet. "I'm not in the business of being rescued," she said. Not harsh, just stated, like a line she'd said before. I nodded. "I'm not here to rescue anyone." She looked at me, not smiled, not yet. But something softened around her mouth. We sat in silence for a while, sipping tea. Outside, rain whispered against the glass. Inside, The warmth from the radiator bloomed through the room. The light from the floor lamp cast gold across her collarbone, her neck. I noticed how she kept her shoulders back, even when relaxed, as if something had taught her to never let herself fold. "Why'd you move here?" she asked eventually. I told her the truth. I needed somewhere quiet, somewhere I didn't have to explain myself. She listened, not interrupting, but watching me like someone who had heard many truths, and wasn't quick to believe any of them. As I stood to leave, she didn't follow. She stayed at the window, looking out at the dark street below. Her voice came just as I opened the door behind me. "Don't mistake kindness for an invitation. Not with me." I looked back. She wasn't looking at me, but something in her posture, the way her fingers lingered on the teacup, told me she wasn't only talking to me. She was remembering something, and guarding against it. It rained for 3 days straight. Not the gentle kind. This rain came in sheets. Fast, relentless. It soaked through the cracks in the old window frames, ran along the hallways, and pooled at the bottom of the back stairs like the building itself had stopped trying. I was heading down with a towel and a flashlight when I saw her already there. Crouched in the laundry room, sleeves rolled, mop in hand. Her hair was pinned up, a few strands curling loose around her neck. Not the carefully composed version of her I was used to. This was different, realer, unedited. "You don't have to do that," I said, stepping into the doorway. She looked up at me, eyebrow raised, but not annoyed. "Someone has to." I dropped the towel and picked up the bucket. She didn't stop me. We worked side by side for a while. No music, no tea, just the sound of water sloshing and the old dryer rattling in protest. She directed me with quiet authority. Where to place the buckets, which valve needed tightening. It was clear she knew this building better than anyone. Not just the walls, but the way it breathed. At one point, I climbed up on the utility stepladder to reach the leaking pipe overhead. She steadied it with both hands, standing close, bracing it as I worked. Her face was tilted up toward me, close enough I could see the faint line of freckles across the bridge of her nose, usually hidden beneath makeup or shadow. My wrench slipped. Water splashed, catching her across the arm. She laughed, surprised by the cold. Not a rehearsed laugh, a real one. Stopped me. "It's not often I get soaked for my tenants," she said, wiping her arm with the edge of her sleeve. I offered her the towel. Our hands met, just for a moment, and in that small touch something passed between us. Not a spark, nothing sudden or cinematic. Just warmth, recognition, the kind that makes you suddenly aware of your own skin. She took the towel but didn't move away right away. "People always assume I'm fine on my own," she said, not looking at me. Her voice softened, quieter than I'd heard it before. "I've made it easy for them." She didn't wait for a response, just turned and went back to the mop bucket, like she hadn't just handed me a piece of herself. Later that night, I lay in bed and found myself thinking less about what we said, and more about what we didn't. The silence between us had changed. It wasn't empty anymore. It was full of something we weren't naming yet. I hadn't planned on finding out it was her birthday. It just happened. There was a delivery envelope left by mistake on the hallway table. Not mine, not addressed to me. I was about to knock and return it, when I noticed the date printed on the card. September 12th. That was today. I stood outside her door for longer than I should have. Not knocking, just standing there, listening for movement. But the apartment was quiet. Later that afternoon, I stopped by the bakery near the station. I didn't know what kind of cake she liked. I picked a slice of something simple, lemon and almond. Clean, not too sweet. Something she wouldn't feel obligated to share. When I knocked, she didn't answer right away. But when the door finally opened, she was in a soft cream sweater, hair loosely tied back. No robe this time. No pretense either. Her eyes flicked to the little white box in my hand. "I figured birthdays should have cake," I said. She didn't smile. Not at first. Just looked at the box. Then at me, like I'd offered her something fragile and she didn't know what to do with it. "I don't do birthdays anymore," she said. I nodded. "Okay. Then this isn't for your birthday." I held it out. It's just a Wednesday cake. Her mouth twitched, almost a smile. She stepped aside and I followed her in. The apartment was dimmer than usual. No music, just the ticking of a wall clock and the faint sound of wind brushing the windows. She lit a small candle. Not on the cake, just on the table. Mood, not celebration. We sat on the floor like we had once before, the little white plate between us. She didn't offer forks. She broke the slice in half and handed me one piece with her fingers. Something about that made the moment feel oddly intimate, like we were breaking bread instead of dessert. After a few bites, she said almost absently, "I used to throw these big dinners. Music, wine, too much food. Always made too much food." I looked at her. She wasn't looking at me. Then one year I just didn't want it anymore. Didn't feel like making space for people who'd already forgotten what it meant. There wasn't bitterness in her voice, just honesty. "You're not what I expected," she said after a while. "Most people your age want noise, motion, distraction." I shrugged. "Sometimes I just want someone who doesn't need to talk over the silence." She looked at me, then really looked, and for the first time, I saw the edge of something soft beneath her steadiness. Not weakness, not loneliness, just the quiet ache of someone who had gone too long without being seen. We didn't touch that night. We didn't need to. But when I stood to leave, her fingers brushed my wrist, gently, almost imperceptibly, as if to say, "Thank you," without saying it out loud. The next few days were quiet again, but not the same kind of quiet. Before, the silence between us had been natural, comfortable even. Now it felt like a closed door. Not literal, not locked, but present in every hallway step, every unanswered glance. I didn't see her that week. Not in the stairwell. Not on the mail run. Not at her window in the mornings with her record playing soft and low. She was still there. I could hear the occasional drawer open, the water run, but something had shifted. She was retreating, and I didn't know if I was supposed to follow. I slipped a note under her door one night. Just 5 words. Just checking in. "You okay?" No response. That silence. It sat with me differently. Not cold. Not cruel. Just final. The next day, I passed her in the hallway. She was unlocking the main storage closet. She saw me. She paused. And then she smiled. But it wasn't the kind of smile that invites you in. It was the one you give when you're keeping someone at arm's length. A smile that says, "Don't read too much into this. Please don't ask me to want anything." "Hey," I said softly. "Hi," she replied, already turning the key. "You've been quiet." She didn't look up from the lock. "I've just been tired. Work. The building. Life." Then she turned to face me. Still calm. Still composed. But her eyes didn't meet mine the way they used to. "You're young," she said. "You'll forget all this soon enough." I shook my head. "I don't think I will." Her voice lowered. "You should." And then, before I could say anything more, she turned and disappeared into the closet. That night, I sat in my apartment with the window open, hoping to hear her music again. But it didn't come. The silence felt heavier than usual, the kind that carries meaning it doesn't want to say out loud. I started to wonder if I'd made all of it up. The warmth in her voice, the way her fingers had touched mine that night with the cake, the shared silence that had felt like more than comfort. Had I imagined the closeness? Had I read too much into her stillness? I nearly packed a box that night, thought about leaving early, ending the lease, saving us both from what this might become, or fail to become. But something stopped me. The weather turned again that weekend. A late spring storm rolled in fast, thunder rumbling low over the rooftops. The lights flickered, then died. I stood in the dark for a long time, holding my breath. And then, finally, I crossed the hallway and knocked. One last time. She didn't answer right away. I stood in the dark hallway, fingers still resting against the wood, wondering if I'd pushed too far or not far enough. The building was silent, the kind of silence that comes just after the power dies. No hum of the fridge, no overhead lights, just the ticking of the rain on the roof and the distant growl of thunder rolling over the hill. Then the lock turned. Slowly, the door creaked open. She stood there in candlelight. Her face shadowed on one side, eyes lit with a softness I hadn't seen before. Not warmth, exactly. Not relief. Something in between. Maybe resignation. Maybe hope. She didn't say anything. Just stepped aside. I entered quietly. Her living room was lit by a single candle on the coffee table. Its flame flickered against the walls, casting two shadows across the room. Hers and mine, side by side. "I didn't think you'd come," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "I wasn't sure if I should." She nodded, slowly, not answering, just sank down onto the floor beside the couch like she had the night with the cake. I sat beside her. The candle glowed between us, small and steady. We sat in silence. I could feel the warmth of her shoulder near mine. Not touching, not yet, but close enough to sense it, like heat from a nearby flame. Her breath was even, measured, but every now and then, it hitched just slightly, like she was working hard to keep something inside. "It's easier when people leave," she said after a long pause. "When they don't ask questions. When they let you stay in your routine and don't notice when your voice gets quieter or your eyes stop meeting theirs." Her voice trembled barely, and she looked down at her hands. "But you noticed, and I didn't know what to do with that." I didn't say anything, just reached out, slowly, and let my fingers rest over hers. She didn't pull away. Instead, her hand turned over, palm to palm, and her fingers closed around mine. Not tightly, just enough. Enough to say, "I'm here." Enough to say, "Don't move yet." "You shouldn't be here," she murmured. I turned to her. "But you didn't want to be alone tonight." She looked at me then, eyes open, unguarded, like a window had cracked in the middle of winter and finally let the air in. She leaned her head gently against my shoulder. I felt her weight, soft, certain, and the quietest exhale against my shirt. We didn't kiss. We didn't need to. Sometimes closeness doesn't come from movement. It comes from stillness. From the choice to stay when it would be easier to walk away. And that night, with only one candle and two shadows between us, we stayed. Morning arrived slow and pale. The storm had passed sometime in the early hours, leaving the sky washed and quiet, like the world had been reset overnight. Soft light filtered through her curtains, spilling over the hardwood floors, catching dust in the air like it had nowhere better to be. I was still on her couch, half covered with a throw blanket that smelled faintly of rosemary and something floral. My neck was stiff, my back ached, but I didn't move. She was already up, somewhere in the kitchen. I heard the kettle click off and the quiet clink of two mugs being set on the counter. There was no rush, no awkwardness, just that strange, slow comfort that comes after an important silence. The kind where you both understand something has shifted, and neither of you are in a hurry to name it. She walked back into the room, barefoot, her sweater loose around her frame. Her hair was down this time, sleep-soft and curled slightly at the ends. She didn't look made up. She didn't need to. She handed me a mug, her fingers brushing mine. Warm, familiar now. "Did you sleep at all?" she asked. I nodded. "A little." Then, looking at her, "You! Enough." She sat on the arm of the couch beside me, one knee tucked in. She didn't say more, just sipped her tea. For a while, we just sat there, shoulder to shoulder, watching the light move slowly across the room. No music, no thunder, just the sound of breath and tea and maybe something beginning. Then she spoke carefully. "If people ask, what are we?" I didn't answer right away. Not because I didn't know, but because the question wasn't about labels. It was about risk, about letting someone see her without the usual armor. I turned toward her. "We're whatever makes you smile like that again." She looked down, and sure enough, there it was. That smile. Small, real, unpracticed, like something was opening in her that hadn't moved in a long time. "That's not an answer," she said, but her voice was softer now. Her leg leaned slightly into mine. "It's the truth." She nodded once, then leaned her head back against the wall, looking up at the ceiling as if it had some answer she didn't want to speak yet. When it was time for me to leave, to shower, to change, to let the world start again, she walked me to the door. Her hand slid down my arm, slow and unhurried. She didn't grab. She didn't cling. She just let her fingers wrap around mine for a breath. Then she let go. Not because she wanted to, because she knew I'd come back. And I would. I didn't knock again that week. I didn't need to. Her door, like her, was open now. Quietly, carefully, but open. And that was enough. If this story touched something inside you, don't forget to like and subscribe. There's plenty more slow burn moments coming your way, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever found unexpected connection when you least expected it? Drop a comment below. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next story.